Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Last Level Press. I'm Mr. Black. Thank you for joining me for another mod spotlight. This time we are taking a look at yet another Fallout New Vegas mod. This is the Kriss Vector submachine gun by Eprdox, however that particular Nexus user likes to have their username pronounced. And like so many mods that I seem to review, this is located just outside of Sunny Good Springs, Nevada, here at the beautiful Yangtze Memorial. Now there are three variations to this weapon. They are all functionally identical, but differ in textures. There's the default, the digital camo, I'll try not to stumble over my own words, and the desert camo versions. All of the accessories for them, as well as the weapons themselves, are all located here in this particularly ordinary crate at the base of the memorial. Now let's head over here where I can get a little bit better light to show these models off. There are a couple of issues with this mod. It needs a couple of updates, but before I get into those, I want to show off the best parts of it first. Obviously, these models are absolutely beautiful. They are extremely well made. They are very high poly, so those of you with somewhat weaker computers may not necessarily want to get this because it is a bit processor intensive just because of how many polygons are associated with these models, and the textures are also pretty high res. So for those with computers that can handle it, this is an amazingly well-rendered weapon. It is easily on par with any of Millennia's best work. Now you may be noticing a rather glaring animation issue here. That is because this is a very easy mod to install. It's just an ESP and a BSA that you drop into your data folder, and with some of the BSA files in there are unique animations that are drawn from another mod, and I believe they are properly credited, so no issue there. But obviously, my hand is glitching straight through the fore end of the barrel here, so that needs to be corrected. I'll address more of the issues with this mod later, but like I said, first I wanted to really show off the very best parts about it. So I've already probably been fade cutting, if I know my own editing style, some of the other texture variations of the weapon over this dialogue. So as I continue to do so, let's have a look at some of the stats for these. Now right away you may notice this does feature its own nice little Pip-Boy icon there, and I kind of like that. It's taken from the grunt thing and adds the weapon to his hand, so that's pretty creative there. I like that. It's a little touch, but it's one that I appreciate. So anyway, stat-wise, it requires 25 gun skill, requires 3 strength, does 20 damage, 227 DPS, weighs 4 pounds, is worth 1500 caps, and is chambered in 9mm. Now, that is on the high end of balanced, leaning toward unbalanced, but mind you, the DPS there and the damage is also reflective of the character that I'm playing right now having maxed out gun skills, so beginning characters aren't going to be bringing quite so much firepower to the foray. So that done, let's have a look at the accessories for this weapon. You can of course suppress it, and that function is self-explanatory. Now one little note. This is actually one of my favorite real-world weapons, so I've got a certain partiality to it. And I will note that the default version of this, sans the red dot, is more or less the actual real-world default version of the weapon, intended for military and paramilitary use. This more closely resembles the civilian version, with an extended barrel to fit with most regulations on barrel length. Obviously the civilian version I don't believe is actually suppressed, but this simply resembles it a bit more. So if you want to kind of simulate that, this can kind of be a good way to do so. Now the other extensions, or rather accessories, don't really, except for the scope, explain what they do. I assume that the accessories here, with the barrel extension and tactical attachments, I guess they probably improve its durability, but it doesn't say, so I can't claim one way or another. But I like what it does to the model at the very least. It adds a tactical rail and an extended barrel, and adds non-functional underbarrel flashlight and overbarrel laser to it. So if this mod author intends to provide more features in future updates, I might like to see that overbarrel laser there actually have the laser accessory animation. I think that could be pretty cool, especially if this is intended to increase accuracy, although I bet that's also what the scope does, so I don't know. That's just ideas that I'm tossing out there. I should note that this I don't believe uses any non-vanilla sound effects. Obviously, the suppressed version should sound quite familiar, as should the non-suppressed version, although that sound effect that you're hearing now is actually not from the vanilla game. It's from one of the other sound overhauls that I've got, but it's still going to be whatever default 9mm sound effect that you have. Now on to the scope. Just like the weapon itself overall, it is incredibly well rendered and textured. Beautiful, beautiful work. Perhaps a bit oversized for this weapon, and allows this to more or less function a bit like the Gunrunner's Arsenal Bozar, in that it's a fully automatic weapon with which you may place accurate shots downrange in rapid succession. So that more or less shows off the very best parts of this mod. Again, it is absolutely beautifully well modeled and rendered. But now, that said, I do have a couple of reservations about it. And please, mod author, if you see this video, please know that I have the very utmost respect for your work. I simply want to provide constructive criticism so that you can make it the very best that I wholeheartedly believe it can be. So, let's jump into a couple of the issues with it. For one, the real-world Kriss Vector is not actually chambered by default in 9mm. It is, in fact, a 45 caliber weapon. Now, I understand that, obviously, the 45 caliber ammunition was not added to the game until the Honest Hearts DLC. So, I would actually suggest keeping either a default 9mm chamber for the weapon, or perhaps 10mm in future updates to represent a little bit more of the stopping power that the real-world weapon has, but add later an optional ESP for Honest Hearts users to rechamber the weapon to 45 to better represent the real-world weapon. That's just my idea. Obviously, there are the animation issues. I have every confidence in this mod author's ability to fix that, because really it just needs to drop the left hand down a little bit to be able to actually wrap around the foregrip there. So if they have the ability to put together a weapon mod like this, a little tweak like that, so it should certainly not be beyond this mod author. It's just a matter of needing to have the issue pointed out so that future updates can rectify it. So, minor issue, but a critical one nonetheless. Now, one other thing that does come to mind for me in terms of criticizing this weapon is the fact that this scope doesn't really belong on this kind of weapon. As beautiful as it is, I hate to say this, but I would really like to see it disappear from this weapon. It doesn't belong on it. That kind of scope is for a high-powered long-range rifle, not a submachine gun. So, while yes, in-game, obviously, it provides nothing but benefit, allowing one to, again, make it function like a Bozar, especially because the weapon is very accurate, as you may see with the tracer rounds there. But again, real-world lore, and one's ability, if one is familiar with firearms like I am, to take this entirely seriously at face value, I would actually prefer for the default version of this weapon to not have the red dot sight, but to instead feature just the iron sights by default, and for the red dot sight to be the accuracy accessory that one can install. Again, I really hate to say that I would like to see that larger scope disappear, but it just doesn't really make sense for a scope of that size and that power of magnification to be on a submachine gun, whose real-world range isn't really meant to be more than just several dozen yards. So, while it doesn't necessarily impact the in-game function of the weapon, it's not really lore-friendly in or out of world. So, please, like I said, take those criticisms in stride. I mean only the very best by them. And I bring them up only because I want to see this mod really become something awesome and amazing, like it's already on the very cusp of becoming. It just needs to throw off these small handful of issues to really live up to its great potential. Now, lastly, one more issue, unfortunately, with this mod, and it has nothing to do with the weapon itself. It has only to do with the ESP. You may note that these save files look a little odd, particularly right here, Mojave Odland. That, I believe, is German for Mojave Wasteland. So obviously I believe this mod author is probably either from Germany or one of the neighboring states, and there was some localization issue in rendering the ESP together, so that it is causing a little bit of issues for those of us who are more Western users that don't necessarily want German to start cropping up and overriding some of the location designations in our games. I know some other mods have had issues like that, and unfortunately some of those issues, if they pile up enough, can actually corrupt save files. So I would actually rank that highest in the priority list of what needs to get fixed, because like I said, animation issues, I can overlook that. I can just try not to pay attention to it, but corrupted save files are really hard not to pay attention to. So I would really, really like to see that get rectified as soon as possible for future updates. Now, I know other mod authors have run into similar issues and been able to patch them, so it's not necessarily a unique problem or one that is very difficult to resolve, but it is one that does need to be resolved. So, that really wraps the Kriss Vector by Eprdox, and like I said, those few handful of issues aside, I absolutely adore this mod. It is a beautiful, beautiful weapon. It's one of my favorite real-world weapons. I have a certain partiality to it. There are so many wonderful little touches to the texturing of this, like the little Pip-Boy icon on the inside of the foregrip, the radiation symbol warning on top of the red dot sight. It's got so much character to it, but in a subtle way. It's not in your face. It's just beautifully, beautifully well rendered. I can't say that enough. I know I've probably said that a dozen times in this video, but this is absolutely on par with some of the very best weapon mods to have ever graced Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3. So I do have criticisms for it. Again, if you see this mod author, please take it in stride so that this can become the very best that it can possibly be. Now, I'm going to stop gushing. I know I've been repeating myself, and that's probably annoying some of you guys. I apologize for that, but I just wanted to really make what I had to say clear, that I adore this mod, but it does have some issues, and I can't necessarily recommend it to everybody because of it. But I have every confidence in this mod author to rectify said issues, so that hopefully sometime in the very near future, I can recommend it to absolutely everyone. So, that is the Kriss Vector, everyone. Thank you for joining me here at Last Level Press. I am Mr. Black, and as always, I wish you all good gaming and Godspeed.